Thank you, Brother Doug. You know, as we begin this morning, I'd like to sing a song. And I know that it's hard to follow Brother Doug, but I'm going to try it. And so maybe you think about this, maybe you have heard this song before. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, N, V, W, X, and Y, and Z. And here's the big finish. Now I've said my ABCs, tell me what you think of me. Anybody ever heard that song? Thank you. I appreciate that. So, why am I singing you the ABCs? Well, this message that we're going to go through today together is the equivalent of the ABCs for our Christian theology. You cannot read if you don't know your ABCs. You cannot understand what other people are writing, what other messages are being given to you. You can't type. You can somehow work on your telephones these days with all the sound recognition and that sort of thing, but you still have to do the sounds of our alphabet. Well, what we have that we're going to go through today is the bedrock foundation of all the teaching that's in the New Testament. If you know this message today, you will be able to understand correctly all the rest of the teaching in the New Testament. If you don't get this message today, it will hamper you in understanding all the rest of the teaching in the New Testament. And so let's get to it and see what it is that we need to have as our foundational teaching of the New Testament. This is called the first teaching. It's the first teaching of Jesus, and it's how we're supposed to conduct our lives in a few word concepts. Now, if you remember, since this is part 3, we've had part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was all about the king's heritage. Since Matthew is the writing about the emphasis of Jesus Christ as king, we had to have, starting out with the king's heritage. And that's where we went through all the genealogy that the Jews would understand and that we understand, fulfilled the Messiah's requisition of coming from the Old Testament. Then part 2, we had the king's inauguration. That was the baptism, where the Holy Spirit came down upon Jesus and the Father spoke and said, "This is my Son with whom I'm well pleased." And so we had the inauguration of Jesus after his heritage. And now we're going to go to this next lesson. But we'll remember that the rich details of kingdom works after part 1 and part 2, after Jesus' inauguration, we asked everybody to avail yourselves of reading chapter 4 of Matthew, verses 12 through 25. And those are the items of Jesus going to work after he's been baptized and after he's been inaugurated. Jesus preaching repentance to those that he traveled to in the nation of Israel. Jesus appointing apostles to extend the kingdom message, and the Jews and the Gentiles all come to be healed and hear the message of the kingdom. That's what that second half of chapter 4 is all about. So we've got Jesus coming as the king, but coming as a different sort of king than ever before, and he is doing kingdom work. And this is what we were able to read. Now we're going to come to the first teaching. And that first teaching is what theologians call the doctrine of the kingdom. Now, doctrine is a word that sometimes scares us because we think it's theological, but we're not exactly sure what it means. Well, it comes from the Latin word that simply means teaching. The teaching of the church. And so we're going to see as we go along that things are going to be separated back and forth between doctrine and working for the kingdom. There's teaching about the kingdom and there's working for the kingdom. And it goes back and forth in all of the Gospels that we have. So you'll see there's a doctrine, there's a teaching, and then you'll see Jesus and the apostles fulfilling that teaching. And so we're going to look at that and start with the doctrine of the kingdom. Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. And if you have your Bibles, you'll want to turn there to Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. And since this is such important teaching and training, I'm actually going to read it for us. Now, when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then finally, the last two are an extrapolation of what he had just said. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So that is the entire bedrock teaching of the character of God that we should incorporate into our lives. And I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, so you'll have to be on your best behavior and at your best attention, because it's something of a Greek lesson, but since it's so foundational, we need to go through it and understand it from the original language, from the Greek. So Jesus gives us the 7 spiritual attitudes for a mountaintop life. And I use this little illustration because, of course, CJ and I came from Colorado, and the mountains were a big deal out there. So you'll notice I've got little letters at the top peaks of all the mountains, HCGGLTC. And that's going to mean something more to us as we get along. But you'll also notice that these are at the top of the peak. And if you're not careful, you can fall down a chasm if you don't pay attention to those things that get you to the peak and keep you on the peak of life. But before we get to those 7 peaks that we're going to talk about, that Jesus has just talked about that we read, we need to understand what this word blessed means. Now, I have to say that I've been very disappointed in some people who have interpreted this word, because they've interpreted it shallowly. Not incorrectly, but very shallowly. They've said things like, these are the be happy attitudes. And they use the word happy, and they say, that's what the word blessed means. It means happy. Well, only in an indirect fashion and not with much depth. And so I'm going to help us by trying to get an idea of what this word blessed means that Jesus uses time and time again in this scripture. Is it Kairo, from where we get kairos or joy in Greek? No. It is not the word kairos in Greek. Is it eulogesin, which means in Greek, I speak abundantly well of? You know, the Greeks have a word for almost everything. No, it's not that word. Is it eutykai? That's the word for happy in Greek. Eutykai. Is it eutykai here? No, it's not eutykai. I'm going to get to what it is sooner than later. Those Greeks. Blessed in this passage of Scripture, in all of the old manuscripts, 100% is the word makaroi. And makaroi in Greek means fully lifted up, meaning having God's kingdom in one's heart, a godly human giving effort to the maximum. That is what makaroi means. And the Greeks used to use that whenever they wrote in the secular sense. The Greeks would write that about a person who was doing great things for one or all of the pantheon of their Greek gods. They would use this specific word to say, oh, that person is special. That person is really in tune with the gods, and we should follow that person. And they would use this term for that. And of course, Jesus uses that same term so the Greek-speaking world at that time can understand what he meant, makaroi. So let's look now at these 7 attitudes that we're supposed to have as Christians from Jesus' very first teaching. When Jesus says the poor in spirit, he says the word there in Greek, tokos, which means destitute. Blessed are they who are destitute in spirit, because if they're destitute of ego spirit, they're going to be not coming to God and saying, I have a lot to say, God, so you listen to me. They're saying, I have nothing that I can say in my behalf, God. Let me listen to you, right? And so this word destitute in spirit means humble, a humble person. And he says that those who are humble people will inherit the kingdom. Now, we should pay very close attention to that, shouldn't we? Because those who are humble will inherit the kingdom of God. And we want to do that. We aim to do that. But the first thing we have to do, Jesus says, is come as a humble person. This phrase, the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God, which is interchangeable in our Greek, is said 52 times in the Gospel of Matthew and 126 times in the entire New Testament. And so it's very important when something like that in the Gospels and in the New Testament is repeated over and over again. Kingdom of heaven, kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God. And Jesus uses that to say, hey, that's my main focus. I want you to get what the kingdom is all about. And this idea of humility is given to us in Luke by Jesus as he's talking later on in his ministry, and he talks about the prodigal son. We all remember the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son wasted his inheritance that his father gave him, but he came back home destitute of spirit, destitute of ego spirit. And he said, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Now, think about a twist in that story. What if the son had wasted all of his inheritance, had made a shamble of everything, and had come back to the father and said, I'm still your son, and you still should treat me right? What would the father's reaction properly be at that point in time? Well, sorry, son, you haven't learned your lesson yet, so you're not going to be accepted back. You need to go on and learn your lessons in life. But he comes back, and he's destitute of ego spirit. And as he does, what does the father do? The father sees him coming, and the father, the first thing he hears out of his mouth is this, and he says, Son, come, I welcome you back, and we are going to celebrate that you've learned your lesson, that you're back and you're penitent and you're right with God and with me. So that is the first thing that we need to understand, humility. And that's what Jesus gives us. And let me tell you, just a personal note. I love this lesson and I dislike this lesson because it convicts me. You know, I constantly wake up in the morning and I say, Father, help me to be humble, caring, gentle, giving, loving, truthful, and counseling to everyone I encounter today. Because I know me, and sometimes I can get my back up and I can violate the foundational characteristics of God. And I'm glad CJ is not here today because she'd be saying amen too much. So let's go on. The second thing that Jesus gives us that we need to pay attention to is those who mourn. Those who mourn, the word there in the Greek is hoi penhotens, and that means heart grieving. Heart grieving. Jesus says, blessed are those who are heart grieving. Gosh, I didn't know that. But think about it. We mourn when we go to a grave of a loved one or a relative, and which is usually the same thing. And we mourn because why? Because we're going to miss that presence among us that we cherished. And the only reason we mourn is because we care about that person. If you come and you're driving your car and you see a funeral procession coming with the lights on, you, out of respect, you pull over and you wait for that funeral procession to go by. But you don't start crying behind the wheel. You didn't know that person. That person didn't have a chance to ever endear themselves to you. So you don't mourn. But those when you're in the funeral, you mourn. And so Jesus is telling us that those who mourn are people who are caring. They care not only about those who have made themselves wonderfully pleasant in their lives, but those who are everyone who is a child of God. So he says, blessed are those who mourn or heart grieving, for they shall be comforted. Well, yeah, this is a little picture that kind of shows that. You know, if you're mourning, people want to come and comfort you. God wants to come and comfort you. And that's a great thing. And notice it's second in the words of character that we're going to hear about God. Jesus says, your Father in heaven is humble. I should be the example of that because I came in a humble manger, and I'm humbly walking around teaching about the kingdom, even though I'm part of God. And so he wants us to get that characteristic of the God of the universe and to get the caring characteristic of the God of the universe. And then third, meek. Now this one's a little bit trickier. It's the word praus, which means broken to ride, like a horse is broken so that it can be productive, so that you can ride that horse. It actually means gentled. You know, a horse is gentled when it's disciplined in order to ride or in order to work and be productive. And so Jesus says, blessed are you when you are disciplined in your life, when you're broken to ride, as the Greeks would say it. They shall inherit the earth. If you're productive in a Christian sense above all else, then you are ethical and you have a work ethic and you want to be productive in this life and you want to be disciplined in this life in order to further God's kingdom with what He's given you in life. And then, guess what? He allows you to inherit the earth. That's what this picture's all about. This horse has been gentled. And the reason I use this, it's a beautiful shot, but a horse with eyes on the side of its head, pardon me, cannot see what's directly in front of him and beneath him. You equestrians will know that are here. But a horse can't see this when he's jumping it. He's too close, and his eyes aren't in the right place. So that's why it's so valued when you have a person, that person who's riding, by their feet and their hands and their words, they tell that horse exactly every time, the same time, this is how I want you to jump this. And the horse goes forward in faith and is disciplined to ride to the point where it says, well, I can't see it when I get there to jump, but I just know when I'm supposed to jump because the rider tells me. And so this is the way we're supposed to be. That's why Jesus used that word. We're supposed to be disciplined for productivity in the world. And then the fourth thing that Jesus says there, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now I've got the word giving there, and it's sort of a head scratcher because, okay, why do you have giving there for hunger and thirst after righteousness? Well, only does the Greek give us the answer. The Greek is dekosune, which means active, equitable expectation. Okay, I'm still scratching my head, right? So what does that mean for Jesus to use that word for this hungering and thirsting after righteousness and that they shall be filled? Well, the way I use a couple of pictures for this, who knows who this is? Tim Tebow, right? Tim Tebow, and he is the kind of person in our modern day who hungered and thirsted after righteousness so much that he would continue to do in the professional realm what he did in the college realm and in the high school realm. He came up through, the football ranks, and he got to be number one and the Heisman Trophy winner, and all through college he would make a touchdown and he would bow and he would raise a finger for, it's not me that's doing it all. Everything I have is due to what God has given me. And lo and behold, he messed up his entire professional career by doing the same thing and honoring God when he got to the pros. But see, that's the thing. He hungers and thirsts after righteousness more than temporal things, more than fame, more than money. And he said, no, I've done that my whole life, and God's blessed me my whole life, and I'm going to keep doing it. And he got ridiculed for that, and he got ostracized for that. And eventually, he got pushed to the side for that. But that's okay. Look how much more Tim Tebow, if you know his subsequent working since he's been out of professional football, how much more the kingdom has been furthered by him than it would be for him just being known for throwing that oblong ball that bounces so crazy. Right? And John Calvin said, we must make the invisible kingdom visible in our midst. And that's that idea of this Greek word for hungering and thirsting after righteousness. Stand your ground. Hold up for what you believe, because those people have the core characteristics of God the Father. Then merciful. Blessed are the merciful. And that is loving. But it's a peculiar brand of loving. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, I'll bet that Greek word that's going to come up next is going to be agape, because agape is used as sacrificial love in the whole New Testament. You're going to be surprised. That word in the Greek that Jesus used here is not agape. It is eleos. And eleos cannot be confused for agape, can it? But what that means in Greek is deliberate compassion or pity. What Jesus is trying to say is not that God is not a God of agape or sacrificial love. He certainly is. But as we show God's agape sacrificial love, we're supposed to show it with great compassion and pity. And Jesus did that, the works of that, as he went along in life. But we're going to call it loving because it's certainly in the full category of that foundational element of God's character. And he says, those who show mercy shall obtain mercy. If you show pity and compassion, then you will be shown pity and compassion by the Father, because the Father says, that child has got my lesson. That child wants to be with me enough that they're willing to be like me enough, and when they die, they're going to come be with me, and we're going to show pity and compassion together. And that's worth the price of admission, isn't it? It's helping those who cannot help you in return. You know, I can say that I love my wife as long as she does exactly what I say. And she loves me as long as I do exactly what she says. And, you know, a lot of people have that kind of relationship. But Jesus is saying, hey, the core characteristic, foundational character of God is to help people who can't help themselves. Isn't that what he did when he came to us? Were you holy when God came to you and saved you? Why'd you need saving if you were holy? You didn't. You were a sinner. And so what's happened is Jesus is telling us, help those who cannot help you in return. And that's a characteristic of the Father. And then, next to the last is pure in heart. What does pure in heart mean? Well, we've got the word there, truthful. And I'm going to get to the depth of it a little bit for us. The word there in the Greek is katharos, or a cleansed mind. It says pure in heart in our English, and that's not bad. It's okay. It's not that we have to be disappointed we've been reading it wrong all these years. We just haven't been getting the depth of it because we haven't had the opportunity to learn the Greek. It's katharos, which means a cleansed mind. And they shall see God. When you have a cleansed mind, you can see God more clearly. And I use these little compositions here. So stay with me for just a minute. We're getting toward the end here. So hang on there. And I interpret this word in the Greek as dedicated to that which is unmistakably real. Because God is the real reality. And the world is fallen. It's not the real reality. It's the reality of being fallen, but not the reality of what we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to live. And I've got these little pictures down here, and I'm not sure exactly what this is supposed to be, but it was in the fantasy realm. And you may know about this more than me. But it's a fantasy that a young girl or a young boy might have as they're playing these games of power, and I may feel like I'm a teenager and I don't have any power and everybody tells me what to do. But in my fantasy life, I can be something really powerful and, you know, have dominion over things and people that I don't have dominion over because I'm a teenager now. And a lot of kids fall into this. But the real 3D of Christian truth, or 5D, or whatever that is that you get when you put those goggles on, is to see Jesus as He is, to see God as He truly is, and that is truth. That is ultimate truth. You know, when Jesus was before Pilate, and I know I've mentioned this several times in some of my sermons, but when Jesus was before Pilate, Pilate asked him who he was, and he said, I confirm the rumor that I'm a king. And he said, well, don't you realize what I can do to you? And Jesus said, oh, you can't do anything to me that my Father's not allowing to be done to me. And then Jesus says, those who follow me are following the truth. And it's the Greek word there is ealetheia, and it means, with that little e there before it, it's a definer, and it says the truth. So his teachings are the truth, and Pilate didn't have the truth, because guess what? Pilate wasn't humble, caring, gentle, giving, loving, truthful, or counseling. And so when we unmistakably dedicate ourselves to the truth of reality, what is it really in your life? Don't deny it. Don't gloss it over. Confront it. You have sin in your life, but you are saved. And so work through it. Work through it and become more like God as you see reality as it really is. And then finally, the peacemakers. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. And that word, in the best way I can explain it in English, is counselors. Blessed are the counselors. Because what that Greek word is, ironopoio. And that means to make mental harmony. It's a composite word in the Greek, and it means to make mental harmony. And so, making mental harmony is what counselors do. They try to get people together and help them to restore and build their relationships. And it's like the Greeks would use this whenever they were talking about the theater, or we're talking about groups that sang in their temples. And they would say, oh, that was great mental harmony toward the gods. And so when we, as Christians, make mental harmony with one another and with the whole world, then we are being the peacemakers that Jesus talks about. And Jesus qualifies this even better when he says, they shall be called the sons of God. Wow, I want that. I want that moniker for myself. They shall be called the sons of God. And Jesus actually uses this Greek word for sons that is the word toiosde. And toiosde means, who would doubt that that little critter right there in the front is going to actually grow up to be that critter later on? You know by experience that that's what's going to happen. And what this word toiosde means is what we would call the spitting image of the Father. Jesus says, if you're a counselor making mental harmony with people, you're a spitting image of your Father in heaven. Wow! Did you ever know you could be a spitting image of God? That's pretty nice. Pretty great. Jesus said so. And then finally, we have to understand what Jesus says. As the church, we have to understand what Jesus says is going to happen. Now, those first 7 words that we gave you, humble, caring, gentle, giving, loving, truthful, counseling, pretty easy to memorize. I challenge you to memorize them all. And they're in a hierarchy. In other words, humble is first and counseling is last. I'll give you a quick example. What would happen if I decided that you needed some counseling, or you even came to me and said, I need some counseling, Pastor. And I said, all right, well, let me tell you something. I've noticed you, and you know what? You're a sorry human being. Now, how are you going to accept that counseling? You're not going to accept it very well from the very beginning, are you? I have to come to you and say, well, I'll do my best. And I don't know everything, but maybe we can talk it out together. That's me coming to you humbly. So you have to be humble first before you can counsel. Does that make sense? You have to be all of these things in a hierarchical order. So I want to be humble first, caring, mourning for others and the sin that has enveloped them, and then be gentled and be disciplined, and to be gentle at the same time, and then to be all the other things down in that line. And Jesus says, blessed are the persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, where have we heard that? We heard it at the very beginning. He said, blessed are the humble, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, the poor in spirit. And then at the very end he says, blessed are you when you're persecuted. Now that's not an attitude. The first 7 are attitudes of God, what God is like, His bedrock character. But this next thing, even though it's under the blessed that you'll be lifted up, it's not an attitude, it's what happens when you do the other 7 things. It's you're going to be persecuted. For theirs is that very same thing, the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus bookends the whole thing with kingdom of heaven, kingdom of heaven. Isn't that neat? So all of this tells us who God is and how far He intends to go to show His love. God is the God of the universe, omnipotent, omniscient, and at the same time, He's humble, because that's what is the truth of the world. He is God who created everything, yet He's humble enough to accept us, scrawny mentality human beings, as adopted children into His family. And so, all of this shows how far God is willing to go. And so, that's how far we should be willing to go as disciples of Jesus Christ. Blessed are the persecuted for being on mission with God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, I have to give us a little bit of a lesson here at the very end. Here's what happened to the chosen people that made them unchosen. They'd been scattered because of their unbelief before, and most stood again in selfish unbelief when Jesus was teaching and preaching and doing His works, because the Pharisees were in control of the theology, and they said they had their own blessed 7. Their blessed 7 said, blessed is the man who takes pride in Israel, centers on his own holiness, maintains control of Israel, holds on to righteousness according to the law, follows all the law, takes from the ungodly, and separates himself away from the wicked. Those were literally the Pharisee 7. Reflected in all their prayers and all of their works and all of their organization. Jesus comes along, and it's no wonder that the people were astounded at what He taught. He said, blessed is the man who humbles himself toward God and man, cares what happens to all people, is gentle and disciplined, pursues others to give to them, loves expecting no reward, is truthful in all dealings, and counsels others toward reconciliation. That blew their minds, and at the same time, the people loved Him and gathered around Him and said, this is not like the teaching of the Pharisees. Can we see it now pretty clearly as we line them up? This is not the teaching of your old king. This is not the teaching of your old rabbis. And so, we have this first teaching of Jesus that gives us the blesseds. It's foundational. If you will truly make it your goal to understand that we, the Church of Jesus Christ, must be humble, caring, gentle, giving, loving, truthful, and counseling, we will have the secret to all the other teachings of God. So, next week, we're going to do this first teaching, part 2, because after the Beatitudes, Jesus goes right into, during the same setting, the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. And boy, is it crucial for us to know and to understand it correctly. Next week, I'll have more pictures and more illustrations and less Greek. But these Greek words, I hope you'll understand and agree with me. It was very important to go through today. So that's what we're going to do next week in part 2 of this first teaching, Doctrine of the Kingdom. And meantime, would you please avail yourself of reading Matthew 6 and 7. That is the content. So you get the content and you'll be able to be ready for me to break it down, unpack it, and put it all back together next week. And so I pray for you as you do that, and let me do that to our Father as we get ready to go. Father in heaven, we do thank you for precise language that lets us know who you are, what we can do, how we can follow you. And we ask you to bless us as we become blessed. In Jesus' name, amen.